Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar at Statistics Solutions. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a quantitative specialist and statistician here at the company. Today, we're going to look at the methodology chapter, specifically quantitative methods, and I'll give you some tips to fast track the process. If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will send everyone a copy of the webinar and the PowerPoint. Good to see some returning names for the webinar. All right, go ahead and get started. So first, I'll give a brief overview of the services that we provide at our company. Then we'll look at planning, discussing communication with your committee, timeframes, and identifying templates for your school. Then we'll look more specifically at the methodology chapter, and then we'll conclude with a summary. All right, so on this slide, you can see all the different parts of the dissertation journey that we assist with. We help with topic development all the way through the end of the dissertation, final defense. So in the middle there, we help with developing your topic, your research questions, your purpose statement, your problem statement. If you need help identifying articles to support your research, pinpointing a theoretical framework, pinpointing a research design is quantitative or qualitative or mixed methods potentially. We can help you figure out what are the best analyses to address your research questions, calculate a minimum sample size requirement for your research. We can help you find appropriate instrumentation to support your topic. We also help with IRB forms, data entry templates. We can upload a survey for you on SurveyMonkey. We assist with results chapters, both the quantitative and qualitative component of a results chapter. So if you just send us your methodology, your research questions, and your data, we can crunch the numbers for you in SPSS and then provide an APA write-up findings. And then we help with the discussion chapter, PowerPoints for both proposal and final defenses, and journal publications. So if you have any questions, you can give us a call at 727-442-4290. All right, so first we'll look at some general tips in terms of planning for the dissertation. This is more if you're at the very beginning of the process. So first, you want to identify your ultimate goals for the dissertation. Are you attempting to make a significant breakthrough in your field or your industry? Or do you just want to get through the process as efficiently as possible? The bottom line is that university is very expensive, and colleges don't really care how long it takes. They're in the business to make money. So while it is noble to pick a topic that is going to be a significant breakthrough in your industry, I would recommend saving that for a journal publication after the fact, where you're not constrained with resources and time and money. So save money, get through the process efficiently, pick an easy topic, pick just a few research questions, pick instruments that have been previously validated. And then for a journal publication, you can dig a little bit deeper and really uncover specifics for your field. Then you want to establish a time frame in which you want to complete each section of your paper, understand how your school functions in terms of committee reviews. Do they want you to submit one chapter at a time for a review, or do you need to submit your entire proposal at once, the introduction, the literature review, and the methodology? And potentially, once you get to your results chapter, they may want you to submit your results and your discussion, final two chapters together. Every college is different. And then you'll want to know how many students your committee is working with, because some committees may only have a few students, a handful. Other committees are dealing with up to 20 students at once. So you'll want to organize your submissions around the committee's schedule. You want to follow your school's template for all chapters. Many schools have a checklist or a template that you can follow. Again, every school has different requirements in terms of the section headings, the page limit or the page minimum, I should say. And the headings may be completely different from school to school. So look for previously approved papers at your school so you can understand what is expected. And what would be even better is if you can gain examples that your chair, your content specialist, your methodologist have worked on in the past. That way you can see the appropriate flow of the paper and what section headings are required, what type of content was included in each paragraph, and then you can mirror the same type of presentation. Typically, when you go through committee feedback, once you do gain committee approval on your chapters, the paper then proceeds to a more formal review. This is often called a URR or an AQR potentially. So you'll need to be prepared to speak with this additional reviewer, the URR or the AQR. And when you're doing meetings with your committee, I would recommend doing a Zoom meeting, just like we're doing today. So Zoom, GoToMeeting, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. These can be really useful because everyone can look at the paper at the same time. They can provide feedback together, and you can record these meetings. So you can go back and watch the recording. So you don't have to take a million notes. You can just watch the recording. And it's good to have the recording in case there's any contradictory feedback at some point in the future. So now we'll look at more methodology specifics. And if you're at the very beginning of the process and you're developing your research questions, you'll want to aim for at least 3 variables of interest for a dissertation. With 3 variables, you can then create at least 2 research questions. That's kind of the bare minimum I see. Sometimes I've seen one. It's one overarching research question, but very rarely. You want to have at least 2 to 3 research questions. And the easiest way to set these up are by testing for relationships or assessing for differences. So you'll want to have independent and dependent variables. We have some sample questions here. Is there a significant relationship between X and Y? X and Y being your variables of interest. So if you just have, is there a significant relationship? This is more of a correlation analysis. But you can also go into regressions potentially if you add the predictive language here. So is there a predictive relationship? The alternative is to look at differences. So comparing variables between groups or over time potentially. So is there a significant difference in job satisfaction based on ethnicity? Or is there a significant difference in self-efficacy before and after an intervention? If you're doing a nursing study, you very likely have to do an intervention. You might have a PICO question where you have to gather data at pre-test, administer an intervention, and then gather data for the same sample at post-test. So based on your research questions, you can kind of pinpoint your research design. So you could be doing a quantitative study, but what is the design? It could be correlational, it could be experimental, it could be causal comparative. So if you're looking at relationships, you're most likely doing a correlational or predictive design. Whereas if you're looking at differences, that involves experimental, quasi-experimental, causal comparative designs. So we have developed webinars in the past about constructing research questions. You can check that out at the YouTube link here. If you joined us a little bit late, you can, someone's saying that there's a bad echo. Is anyone else hearing an echo on their end? But we're going to see, okay, so it looks like no one else is hearing an echo. I'm not sure what the problem was, Beth. Okay, very good, very good. So yeah, if you joined us late, we're going to send everyone a copy of the webinar and the PowerPoint. Right, so then once your research questions are set in stone, you can look at your data collection plan. So I would recommend selecting either a survey approach or you can use archival data. Try not to use both data collection approaches in one study because it can be very difficult to merge self-report survey responses with archival data. An example of this could be if you're looking at test scores for students or GPA, and then you're administering a survey to those same students. The GPA measurements are more archival, whereas the survey is going to be a self-report survey. And that can be difficult to merge two different types of data collection. So pick one approach early on and stick with that approach. So surveys involve identifying a sample, usually on your own, and then asking the participants to complete the self-report questionnaire. Archival data is also called secondary data, and this corresponds to data that already exists on a database, so hospital records, school test scores, things like that. And if you're at the beginning of the process and you're considering doing mixed methods where you have quantitative and qualitative data collection, I would strongly recommend not doing that, just because it adds so much time to the process. You'll have to give a self-report survey, and then you'll have to interview people one-on-one after that. And you have to triangulate your data, merging the quant and qual. That can be a very tricky process. So just stick with one method, either quantitative or qualitative. All right, and more on the data collection. Once your research questions are set in stone, you can run a power analysis. And this is going to give you an idea of how many people you need to target for your research. So a power analysis will give you the specific minimum sample size that you need. There's many softwares to run this. Most common here is G-Power. So G-Power is going to tell you how many people do I need to compare my groups. Now, say we're doing a pre and post test. So it's matched pairs, two dependent means. And just to give you an idea, if you're doing a pre and post study, you would need 34 participants at pre and post. But they have multiple analyses here. You can compare groups, you can run regressions in here. If you're doing regressions, it's based on how many predictors you're looking at. So, the more predictors you have, higher your sample size. So if we had 5 predictors, you need 92 cases. If you need 7 predictors, then that increases up to 103 participants. So run this early on so you know how many people you need to target. And if the sample size seems too large to obtain, then there's a few options. You might have to develop new research questions. You might have to change your analytic approach, or you'll have to interpret your results with caution. All right, and if you're planning to use a self-report survey, use an instrument that's previously validated. Try not to create your own questionnaire, because this will involve a pilot study potentially. You have to give the survey to a panel of experts, and they have to evaluate the survey. And you also might have to do validity checks. So complex analyses like CFAs and EFAs. So try and find something that's already on the internet that you can adapt or that you can borrow. And then within the self-report survey, there's usually an instrumentation section in the methodology where you have to describe the survey. So these are some bullet points to keep in mind. Who developed the survey, provide a reference and a year. What population was the survey originally tested on? Does it align with your population? Give an idea of how many numbers are on the instrument, how many survey questions. Does it use a Likert scale format, like strongly agree to strongly disagree? Is it a yes or no type of response? Is it an objective questionnaire where there's one correct response and the other responses are incorrect? Does the survey measure an overall scale? And are there subscales potentially? What are the possible scores for these measures? What is the level of measurement for the final variable? Is it nominal? Is it ordinal? Is it continuous? You most likely will also have to provide reliability and validity support for the instrument that you select. So a common reliability measure is Cronbach alpha, and you'll want to aim for support at the alpha levels above 0.7. And for validity, you can look for EFA and CFA findings. you're using archival data and not a self-report survey, it can be a little tricky to find reliability and validity support because there's often not reliability measurements like Cronbach alpha. But instead, you'll want to provide evidence that the archival data has been checked for accuracy. Then you can go into your data analysis plan. Okay, so this is where you pinpoint what software are you going to use to crunch your numbers and present the findings. There's many softwares you can use. At our company, we use SPSS and Intellectus Statistics. So Intellectus is our own company software. You can check out the link here. It provides an APA write-up for you automatically. It's done in minutes. It's pretty cool. You can also clean your data in Intellectus, so you can check out that hyperlink here. Then you want to discuss missing responses. Are you going to replace missing values with a particular number? You can use mean imputation. You can use predictive imputation. You can remove missing cases altogether. So your committee probably has a preference for how to deal with missing cases. But you can avoid this altogether if you're doing a survey on SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics. You can make every question mandatory, so then you don't even have to deal with the headache of non-responses. So I would strongly recommend that. Then you will use descriptive statistics. If you have a demographic questionnaire, you'll want to describe how are you going to summarize the demographics, looking at frequencies and percentages for gender, ethnicity, education level, and maybe using means and standard deviations to summarize your survey variables. And then you want to go research question by research question. What is the particular analysis you're going to use to address each question? So give the specific test, if it's a t-test, if it's regressions, if it's ANOVAs, pinpoint what is your independent and dependent variable for each question. What statistical assumptions are you going to check before running the primary analysis? So there are things like normality, which we've discussed recently if you've joined our webinars. We have homogeneity of variance and linearity. Then you want to discuss the process in which the findings will be interpreted. And you can check out this website here, Statistics Layered. They give a very good breakdown on how to run analyses in SPSS, what assumptions to check, and the correct process for interpretation. So in summary, the first thing is maintaining consistent communication with your committee. Check in with them every week to 2 weeks. Know when they are going to be reviewing your paper. Organize around their schedule, keeping in mind they have other students. Follow your school's template and the guidelines. So a lot of schools will have a checklist for what is required in every chapter and every section. So make sure you're hitting all of those bullet points. Ask for approved papers from your committee specifically that they have worked on in the past. And if you're at the very beginning and framing your research questions, then aim for at least 3 variables of interest and 2 research questions. Pinpoint either a survey approach or archival data. Try not to use both. And avoid mixed methods if you can. Just select a quantitative or qualitative approach. Run a power analysis as soon as you can so you can pinpoint the minimum sample size you need to address your questions. And if you're having trouble, I should have mentioned this before, if you're having trouble collecting data on your own, you can hire companies like SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics to target your population. You just give them criteria, specific criteria for your sample, and they will charge per response. And they'll guarantee that people will take your survey. It's a little expensive, but that is a good alternative. If you're using a self-report survey, pinpoint what are the variables of interest, give the scoring instructions for the tools. Are there subscales? Is it using a Likert scale? What is the reliability and validity information? And then provide a plan for analysis to address each question. All right, so if you have any questions, you can give us a call at 877-437-8622. We have a couple different numbers you can use. You can also email Janine for a free consultation. And if you have any questions right now, you can type them into the chat box. Any questions about the methodology? Do we have any questions? Excellent. Thanks for joining, Kofi. We have a question from Winnie. Do you have any webinars on qualitative methodologies? Let me see. We might. So here's our company website, and then you can go to webinars right here and webinar archive library. I'll link in the chat box. Oh, it looks like Sierra just put the hyperlink for it. All right, excellent. Yep, so you can also check out the past recordings we've done on this page. We do about 8 webinars a month, from literature review topics to methodologies and even going into results and interpretations. A question from Betsy, do you have any webinars for the 3-chapter dissertation? I'm actually not familiar with that, with the organization for a 3-chapter. I'm sure a lot of the same information applies. You're just merging maybe your introduction and literature review go into 1 chapter. Maybe the methodology and results go into 1 chapter together. It would be a lot of the same information that we have on these other webinars, but it's just merging the chapters together. So let me put this in the chat box here. I have some good questions. Do we have any additional questions? Right, well, thanks for joining, everyone. We'll send a copy of the webinar and the PowerPoint for this presentation, and come join us for the future webinars. Have a great day. Take care.